If you've had a hard day, you can't just say it different in the last 5 minutes, because the universe doesn't hear what you say. The universe hears how you feel. So your best chance of really feeling good is after a night of momentum slowing, rather than after a day of momentum increasing.
That's very, very well said.
Yeah. Certainly, it's always better to speak positively, but don't you find yourself sometimes challenging your own thoughts? People will say, it's like my thoughts are thinking me. And we say, if you've got a negative train of thought going, what you want to do is make it more general if you can. Just generalize it, step back from it if you can.
I'm just thinking in terms of, you're going to sleep for 8 hours, let's say, and you're going to marinate in whatever thoughts that you have just filled your subconscious mind with.
Not really.
No?
That's the thing that we're really wanting to explain, is that law of attraction, the momentum of law of attraction, is not active while you are unconscious. Now, it's logical that when you wake up, you'll refocus, and you'll get your propensity of thought is already there. But that can change with this new discussion about getting a different trajectory going.
Oh my goodness, I love you too. I love all of you. It's so nice to be here.
Well, somebody said, what are you going to talk about? And I said, I don't know and I don't want to know. I didn't want to get anything in my head. But I like the idea of someone brilliant like this. Yeah. Talking to Abraham. What could be better than that? It's like co-creating at its best, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
It's 1987 or 88. Someone sent me a big collection of cassette tapes, and I started listening to them, and then we made contact maybe a dozen years or so ago, and I've been just an incredible fan of Abraham. I think it's the wisest and most profound teachings on the planet today. I do.
Wayne has sold more of our books than we have.
Yeah. I'm a true believer. I just know that this is, when someone is telling you the truth, and when you really feel the truth that's in your heart, and you know you're being told exactly the way things are.
Resonance, huh?
Yeah, it just resonates with me. It always has, and you've never missed. And in the hundreds, thousands, perhaps, of times I've heard you.
Well, tonight,
you've never missed.
We never know. I'm going to go get Abraham. Is that all right with you?
Do you need a GPS or anything like that? Or is that just,
It just takes a minute for me to clear my mind, and they'll just say, hey, okay? Who are you going to go get?
Yes.
I have a feeling you're going to go get Abraham, too. If you really want to know, I think that's what you've been doing for a while, too.
Well, there are many times when I do exactly feel that way as well. Yeah.
Okay, here I go. It is nice to have an opportunity to visit. Co-creating at its best, yes?
Yes.
So now what?
I'd first just like you to just tell me and everyone watching and everyone here in this room who you are. Who is Abraham? For those who don't know, including me. Would you tell us?
The most important thing to explain is we are a collective consciousness, a vibration, not different from that which all of you have access to. But because of Esther's focus over the years, she's managed to accomplish a frequency, so to speak, that allows her to hone in on us. She can hear us in a more pointed way. Everyone who is physically focused, and that includes all of you, are extensions of source energy. And we are just that source energy that you are all extensions of. But as you move around through your day-to-day experiences, not meaning to, you often find vibrational frequencies because of what you are observing that prevents you from receiving the fullness of who you are. And we are the fullness of that, you see. So some have tried to get us to define ourselves in physical terms, but we cannot. And we are not whispering words to Esther that she is repeating. We are offering blocks of thought, and she is finding physical words that match those blocks of thought. Everyone does this. You're all inspired. It's just that you can be inspired from different points of attraction. You could be in a very bad mood and receive inspiration, but you're not receiving inspiration from source energy. You're receiving inspiration from blocks of thought that have been sort of left on the physical trail. And so it's a matter of tuning to high frequency and doing it consistently enough that there is consistency to what you're receiving. That's the easiest way of explaining it. And the most important thing that we want to say to you and to everyone is you're all doing it. You just don't usually do it consistently. And Esther doesn't either. A forum like this, it's easy for her to do it because you all come expecting. And so it is on the desire, momentum of desire that you have going that we ride in on, so to speak.
So you are really a collection of just vibration, of just higher and higher frequency, equivalent to God, would you say? Is it?
Humans have a hard time defining us, and they have a hard time defining God. And they have a hard time defining those physical friends who have been in physical bodies who have now reemerged into non-physical. You have a sort of, as humans, we love you so much, you have a sort of screwy perspective of this continuum of life. You think you come into these bodies and you live for a little while and you get it right or you don't, and then you leave and then you come again, when really what is happening is you are eternal. You never really leave. And even when you are no longer focused in your physical bodies, you are still focused, and you are still focused upon what's going on here. There is a collective consciousness that is so interested, so eager about everything that you all are about. And that source energy is what man wants to call God, and it's what you all have access to.
So I've often said that we're not here as human beings having a spiritual experience, but rather it's the reverse, that we're infinite spiritual beings just having a temporary human experience.
Oh, and when you stand in your now moment, and somehow, some way, you have practiced yourself into a high-flying vibration where you're not ornery or you're not upset or you're not worried about anything. So you are pure positive energy. And then you allow, because you are in that high frequency, you allow that inspiration to flow. Now you are so much more than what you have thought yourself to be. Now you are the extension of that source. And that's when you feel clarity and passion. That's when your timing is good. That's when you're at your funniest. That's when you feel the best.
I think of the word, I wrote a book years ago called Inspiration, using the two words inspire, inspirado, inspire, in spirit. And there was a great teacher on this planet a couple of thousand years ago named Patanjali, and he said, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, that all of your thoughts break their bonds, your mind transcends limitations, your consciousness expands in every direction, and you find yourself in a new and a great and a wonderful world.
Perfect.
And then he said, and this is what I want to ask you about, he said, dormant forces, when you're inspired, dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive. and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you've ever dreamt yourself to be. It's almost as if you discover yourself to be God or Source or the Tao or Divine Mind or whatever name we place on this source energy that you speak of and speak to us from.
The way we've been defining that most recently is that when you wake up in the morning, you have the potential of being in that highest frequency, because while you slumber, your point of attraction, the momentum of your point of attraction stops. So when you first wake up, before you begin thinking thoughts of what went wrong yesterday or what you have to do today, you're in your greatest potential of that pure positive energy. So if you can focus there and allow a little momentum to get going, what happens is it isn't something that just happens, it's something that you focus yourself into being. But when you focus yourself into that, you tune in, is the best way of describing it. You tune in to that source energy consciousness who has always been aware of everything you're doing, but there's a big difference when you tune into it and you consciously are aware of it. In other words, source is there for everyone all the time. We don't need to talk you into that. We're always there. But when you know it, when you're not doing that thing you do that is preventing you from knowing that, that's when you have those wonderful moments. And you can do that all the time.
In the middle of the
and they call that the master, but all of you do it. It's just the mastery of focus is what it is.
I wake up every night around 3 o'clock in the morning. And there was a great poet, his name was Rumi, many, many years ago. He said, the morning breeze has secrets to tell you. Do not go back to sleep. Do not go back to sleep. Do not go back to sleep. And many of the books that I've written when I'm awakened, and there's something, what is it? What is it that awakens me? It's like I can almost tell you the exact time. It's like, because in a film I did years ago called The Shift, they show a clock, it's 3:13 a.m., almost to the second. Every single night, there's something. Is that angels? Is that divine source? Is that someone saying, this is your purpose, this is the time, there's no distractions?
The thing we most want to say is that we're with you saying that all the time. So what's interesting to us is that that's the time that you decide to listen.
Right. But there's nobody else around to distract me.
And that's the important conversation to have. So what is it about that time? What is it that's happening there that makes you more resonant, that makes you more receptive? And it is that the momentum of your thought has stopped. So there is no contradictory vibration going on within you. So you're more likely to hear. Esther has been saying to herself, when she awakens like that, she will say, am I awake? Because if I'm awake, I am going to get up. And so it's conscious awareness of that high frequency vibration. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. But I find for me, the most creative moments are that middle of the night time when...
Well, think about what that is. When you think a thought for as little as 17 seconds, law of attraction will bring another thought like it to it. So momentum begins.
What do you mean? Law of attraction will bring, what is law of attraction?
Let's say that you wake up in the morning and rather than finding that clear space that is potentially there for you to find, instead, as soon as you wake up, you remember the trouble that you had yesterday. And you think about being at work, and you think about the dilemma, and you think about the discomfort, and you think about the discord. And as you focus for as little as 17 seconds, more thoughts like that will join it. So another 17 seconds, more momentum still. Another 17 seconds, more momentum still, until you cross something as short as the 68-second mark. You have lost your window of alignment with source. Doesn't mean, Esther said to us the other day, because we said, well, you can always begin again tomorrow. You can always begin again tomorrow. And Esther said, I refuse to accept that I have to wait all the way until tomorrow to get back on my high-flying disc. I can do it. I know I can do it by focusing. It's just so much easier. So we like to talk about law of attraction because it is the vibrational engine that manages everything. And we can't talk about law of attraction without talking about momentum, because there is a momentum in thought. And if you think a thought long enough, it becomes a strong habit of thoughts, what you call beliefs. A belief is just a thought you keep thinking. So sometimes you have beliefs that do not serve you. But when you first awaken, those beliefs are quiet enough that you can find a fresh one that comes from source, that is about who you really are and what you really know.
Is the reverse of that if you awaken and you have a very positive thought? That is, I'm going to heal myself.
Well, that's a wonderful thing. Once you get that momentum going.
But like the 17-second rule apply to that as well?
It applies to everything. And the rule of thumb is, when you acknowledge that law of attraction is, whether you like it or not, and you acknowledge that it is responding to the vibration that you are offering right now, and therefore momentum will get going. So if we were standing in your physical shoes, if the thought felt good, we'd think it. We'd think more about it. We'd talk about it. We'd write it down. We would discuss it with others. We would deliberately encourage that momentum. But if it's an uneasy thought, if it feels uncomfortable, then we would do our best to generalize it. The more specific you become in a thought, the more momentum. The more general you become in a thought, the slower the momentum. Esther remembers San Francisco driving to the top of one of those, what she called ridiculous hills. She couldn't believe that people were actually driving on those hills. And so we said, well, imagine perching your car at the top of one of those hills, take it out of gear, take the brake off, and just for fun, just to see what happens, nudge it a little bit from behind. Well, you know what will happen, and if you come to your senses, you'll step out in front of it and let it bump up against you, and you will stop that unwanted momentum. But you would not want to be at the base of that hill stopping that unwanted momentum. Right. So your thoughts are the same way. When you get the hang of this, when you begin to realize that every thought is vibration and that law of attraction is responding to every thought, and the thought is going to increase, the only question is it one you want to increase? Because it's going to increase. Law of attraction insists that it does.
Can you have a thought, like I talk a lot about the I am discourses. I am as the name of source, another name for source. If you are feeling weak, but you have a thought saying, I am strong, I mean, that's one of the lines from the book of Joel. Let the weak man say, I am strong. If you continuously say, I am strong, or I am well, or I am healed, or I am wealthy, or I am positive, or I'm loving.
It makes sense. It makes sense, but there is a effort factor, a backfiring factor, that sometimes every subject is really two subjects, wanted and absence of it. So if you are feeling not strong and you say, I am strong, which end of the stick are you activating? And what we've noticed is the more effort you are applying, usually you're trying to overcome what you've really got going on vibrationally with words. And instead of it working the way you want it to, it works in reverse, because when you're trying really hard, it's an indicator that you're trying to use your words and your actions and your affirmations to compensate for vibration that you didn't get started off on the right foot. We think affirmations are wonderful, but we would make sure that we are feeling really good when we affirm, because the universe doesn't hear what you say. The universe hears what you mean.
It also responds to how you feel, doesn't it?
Well, that's right. That's how you know what you mean. So if you're feeling weak and you're proclaiming that you're strong, the universe is just, and the louder you're saying it, the more the universe is hearing you demanding something that you do not feel. It's trying too hard. For a while we were offering an analogy that we see you, it's like you go down to the river's edge with your canoe and you put it in the water and you point it upstream and you paddle really hard, because it feels like to get something done, there should be some struggle involved. But law of attraction is responding. Law of attraction is the path of least resistance. And if you can accept that you are source energy and that there is a trajectory of ease and least resistance. And you can feel when you're on that trajectory, and you can feel when you get off of it. And sometimes the more you proclaim that you're on it, the more you're really off of it, just trying to get on it. And it's better just to take a nap.
All right, I've got a very important question. Not that these haven't been. I have 8 children.
You have our condolences.
Well, before I had any children, I had 8 theories about how to raise children. Now I have 8 children, no theories about how to raise children. But I have a daughter, her name is Serena. And when she was 11, 10, 9, whatever years old, she used to always complain to me about my fathering, about my parenting, giving me lots of advice about I do this wrong and I do that wrong. And after a while, I just got fed up with it one day, and I had been listening to some of the things that Abraham had said, and I said to her, I said, if you don't like the kind of father that I am, the kind of parent that I am, then you shouldn't be blaming me. I said, you should really be taking a look at yourself and asking yourself, why in the world would you pick me to be your father? And she stood on her hands and put her hips on and rolled her eyes back, that 10-year-old kind of look, and said, you're telling me that I actually picked you to be my father and picked Mom to be my mom? I said, exactly right. I said, and when you're making important decisions like that, you should really be very careful about it.
Even more than that, you are right now evoking the kind of parent I am being. Your expectation is so powerful, I cannot override it. I could, but we seem to have rendezvoused on a vibrational spot that makes each of us want to blame the other for what's going on here.
So her final response to me, which was the best response I think I've ever heard from one of my kids, she said, well, then I must have been in a hurry. And my question to you, Abraham, is there anything before we show up in this world of form?
Yes.
That we have any access to who our parents
Yes.
are going to be? How does that work?
Well,
Okay.
there's a powerful trajectory. There's a powerful but general plan. You knew that you were coming forth, and you knew that the variety would be perfect. You knew that the variety would inspire you to your personal new preferences.
But when you say you knew, in what way? I mean, there's no brain to work with, there's no body to work with. You're in this formless...
What does brain have to do with consciousness and knowing?
You're the one who has to answer that.
The brain is the focusing mechanism that you're utilizing here. But there is consciousness that is outside of what you call the human focus of the brain. That's this vibrational thing. In other words, we talk about vibration, we talk about energy, we talk about thought, we talk about emotion. But really, by the time we're talking about emotion, emotion is a manifestation. There's quite a bit of momentum going before emotion shows you how well aligned or not you are with that broader perspective. So before you came into this physical body, you were consciousness, and you were eager about projecting some of that consciousness into a physical body, because you knew that in this physical body, with all of the other wonderful and diverse physical beings that would share this time-space reality with you, you knew that you would be inspired to new ideas, and that really turned you on, because you know that you're an eternal being, and you know that without some new idea, eternity ceases. You weren't worried about that because you knew the time-space reality would inspire the new ideas. So you had this general sense of your well-being. You understood your absolute worthiness. The thing that is so beneficial for Esther, and now for us, and therefore for all of you, in experiencing the transition that Jerry has made into non-physical, is that she can feel his keen interest in things she's doing now. She knows He's consciousness. And she knows what he's interested in. She can feel when she finds alignment with what he's thinking. She can feel when she's off on a path that he's not a vibrational match to. And Jerry is just an example of that non-physical consciousness that has always been there. This continuum that humans think, this generation is born and then another and then another. That's not the continuum of life. The continuum is you come forth into this physical body and you mix it up and you find things that interest you, that delight you, that encourage you, that amaze you. You find things that are desirable to you. And as you find those things while you're in your physical body, those desires don't cease when you reemerge into non-physical. Instead, you join that cadre of non-physical consciousness who is still interested in the things that you were interested in. Only now you're interested from no resistance. Now when you desire something, you don't shoot it in the foot with doubt. Now when you desire something about yourself, you don't lay it over with unworthiness. Now you are pure positive energy, you see. Oh, when you feel in your physical body thrill bumps, that's us having a moment with you. Those thrill bumps that you think are yours, are you resonating with the way we feel? So never confuse the fact that we are non-physically focused and therefore formless with being mindless or with being emotionaless or being interestedlessness.
Right. So that was before, you know. I mean, I know in a timeless world there's no before and after, but so we leave our bodies, and like you just had Jerry just leave your physical world. My mom just left my physical world just a short time ago. Is she capable of recognizing me? Does she still know that
Not
she
just
has
capable, hard at it all day, every day.
Really?
But you have to reorient yourself about your mother. Because when she reemerges into non-physical, she leaves behind all doubt and fear and worry and all of those personality characteristics that you sometimes pick up along your physical trail. In other words, that's what we like about telling you that when you wake up in the morning, you have the potential of pushing the reset button. Because that's what happens when people reemerge into non-physical. They push the reset button, and it doesn't mean they lose interest. In fact, their interest is more keen, more interest than ever before. But you can't find resonance with her if you're thinking about her as she was before she left behind all of her resistance, you see.
I was in Glasgow, Scotland this summer, and it was just a short time after she passed away. And she was there in the room with me.
Yeah, she's watching for moments when you're not offering resistance.
It's very interesting because in my dream, the first time that after she passed, I was driving, it was like a sort of a waking dream, kind of a lucid dream. And I drove up to the house where we lived. She died at 96, but she was in her 40s at this time. And I drove into the driveway and I went to open the door, and there was a screen door there that had never been there, and I couldn't get the screen door open, and my mother just opened the door this way, and I just looked at her. And
because a screen door represents the resistance that you're accustomed to seeing
and
in your
she
physical
opened
form.
it inward too, by the way. She opened it in. And I said to her, you can't be here, you can't be here, you're dead, you're dead. And as I said those words, she faded away.
Your ability to see her changed.
And she became old, and her arms went from a 40-year-old woman to a 96-year-old.
Yeah, well, she would like you to cut that out.
And yeah, I did. I mean, I talked to Louise Hay about that, a dear friend of both of ours, and she said the next time, she said the reason that she couldn't stay there with you.
It's not that she couldn't stay there, it's that you couldn't see her. It is your human inability to perceive, not the absence of source.
So the concept of death to her.
There is no death.
Right.
There's only life and more life. And now the concept of death equals clarity and eagerness and fun and fullness and sureness and certainty and worthiness and passion and eagerness and interest in what you're about.
So
more so than ever before. She had no idea how good you are. She loved you unconditionally.
I feel her now.
But not like that. Yeah, she's all over the place, isn't she?
Yeah.
You seeing any auras? You can see auras, yeah. She's floating around here, yeah.
And I think since I got the mic and I get to talk to you, I think about my own experience as a young boy. I spent the first 10 years of my life in a series of foster homes and orphanage and so on. And my father was a man who just walked away. Spent some time in jail. I mean, he was a very abusive man. He left my mother with 3 boys under the age of 4 and just disappeared. Long story. I mean,
just the way you planned it, the trajectory you wanted, because you are a freedom seeker to the core of your being. You didn't want anybody bossing you around.
Yeah. Yeah, I've often said that when a little kid says, "You're not the boss of me," my kids, I've heard them say it many, many times. "You're not the boss of me." I always say that's not a bratty little kid. That's someone saying, you know, I'm
autonomous. Yeah. I've come with great reason. I have guidance from Source. Yeah. I'll tune into who I am.
So I never met my father. I grew up with rage in my heart towards this man who could walk away and just never look back and never pay any support and never even ask a question about his 3 boys or anything. I was the youngest, and
he did his part. He gave you an avenue into physical. Most parents mess it up far further than that.
Did I choose him to be my father?
Deliberately.
Because if you were to ask me, or if I were to tell you, the most significant moment in my life was in 1974, when I was 34 years old, and I was at his grave in Biloxi, Mississippi, and before that I was drinking and I was overweight and my life was out of control. I was writing. I'd written some textbooks, but the kind of writing I really wanted to do, I just couldn't get it. It just wouldn't come. I was not taking good care of myself. Pardon?
You were too mad.
Yeah, I was filled with rage. I mean, I would wake up in dreams and I'd just be screaming and I'd be fighting him and I'd be sweating. And this was almost a nightly occurrence. I went to his grave and I really went there to do something on his grave. That wasn't a kindly thing. But for the 2 hours or so that I was there, it was the 30th of August, 1974. I went back to the car to drive back to New Orleans, to drive back to New York. I was teaching. I was a professor at St. John's University in New York. And something called me back. Now, I don't know what it was, but it was just...
How far down the road were you when you left?
How far down?
After you left?
After I left his grave?
Yeah.
I didn't even I only got to the car. I was in the car, and something said, "Go back to the grave." And I went back to his grave, and I was sobbing. And I forgave my father. I said, "From this moment on, I send you what's on my shirt here. I send you love. I send, you know," and I did a film about him, called him my greatest teacher. Everything in my life changed and turned around. My writing took off. I wrote a book that became like international bestseller world. All of the stuff that came, it came when I got that rage and anger.
What do you think happened? What do you think happened? Because he was always there with you. He was always loving you. He was always proud of you. He was always appreciating you.
Really?
He was always, well, because he's source energy. So that's how he was feeling.
Even while he was here on this planet?
Oh, no, he was all pinched off then.
Yeah, he was in jail.
But once he reemerged into non-physical, he was in that place of pure positive energy, and his influence is strong. So, and your desire to understand all of this, your desire to teach this, your desire to let go of the resistance that's holding you back. In other words, when you forgive someone, what you do is you let go of the resistance that's keeping you from your alignment. And it really doesn't have anything to do with the subject of resistance. Feels like it, because that's what you're focused upon, you see. But what we are asking you is, what do you think happened? What do you think happened? You went there with strong desire. You went there with desire. Could you articulate that?
Yes. Well, I can articulate to the point of saying I went there. I wanted to find out. I wanted to see his death certificate. I wanted to know if he even acknowledged that he had a son named Wayne. I just wanted to know
So
that.
your bitterness was still really, really strong.
But there was something that was driving me. My other two brothers, they couldn't care less about it at all. They just, and
Well,
my mother would never talk to me about it. She
what-
just said he was an asshole. That was her.
What drives you-
my mother never used language like that except that one time.
What drives you is the trajectory of well-being. What drives you was the understanding that you didn't come to be a dependent on someone else. You didn't come to use someone else as your object of attention, to use as your excuse for not coming into alignment. And so something happened in that moment that caused you to let go of that. Maybe it just got old. Maybe it just felt futile. Maybe you felt the ridiculousness of it. Maybe it had just gone on too long. Or maybe there was a reset button. Maybe you had found a desire that was stronger than your old beliefs. And for just a moment, the desire took precedence. You see what we're getting at? The desire that's coming forth from within. We've written a handful of books, and in all of the books have been processes. And every process is written to help someone find a way to release resistance. And some of them, we sort of encourage you to hit it head on, but those processes don't work very well for people, because usually when you've got a habit of thought, you've got a habit of thought. So something happened to you that caused you to cease the momentum that you had going for so long and feel for a moment the fullness. And so what we want to say to you, you felt, was the powerful God force love that was pouring through your father, your non-physical father, focused upon you, wanting you to feel it. And so the best way for us to say it is that his love was stronger than your hate. And he caught you at a weak moment, and you felt it. And that's what we're talking about all day. In other words, people will talk about healing. They want to know, they want to find someone that can help them. And we say, source energy is flooding this energy towards you at all times. You don't need some advocate to do what source is already doing. But if someone can help you soften your resistance so that you can somehow be receptive to that love and that well-being that's being flowed, all you have to do is get a little of it. And as you say, it's life-changing. Your life turned on a dime because you returned to the path of least resistance, to the lover that you are. And you left, not completely, but you took big steps in leaving that hate behind.
Is there only love on the other side?
Yes.
There's only love.
Yes.
So
Only love. Only love. Only pure positive energy, love and clarity and passion and eagerness. Yeah.
sometimes in my talk I speak about this whole idea of transcending the duality. Like this physical world is just all duality. It's up, down, good, bad, male, female, east, west, north, all of.
Well, it helps you focus. In other words, if you don't know what you don't want, you can't know what you do want. We call that step one.
But
Causes you to ask. You just made a lifestyle out of it.
But when you when you step out of this, when I step out, when I take my last breath and step out into the non-physical, there'll be no opposites. There's
contrast, but from this physical perspective, it would be indiscernible. In other words, for a while we've been talking about the three-step process of creation, and we say ask is the first step, and contrast helps you to pinpoint that.
What do you mean by contrast? Is it
variety, difference.
I see.
Knowing what you don't want, knowing what you do want. So that causes you to launch these vibrational rockets of desire, so to speak. And Source receives them and becomes a vibrational match to them immediately. So when you ask, it is immediately given. But there's often quite a vibrational gap between what you're asking for and where you're hanging around. That's what you were talking about. You were asking for that forgiveness, but you were hanging around in something quite different. So this gap is what is uncomfortable. So then step 3 is what we've been calling allowing. That's where you find some way to find vibrational alignment with what you're asking for. It really is the path of least resistance. But if you've been practicing a strong other path, it sometimes doesn't feel like the path of least resistance, but it ultimately is. That's why you ultimately reemerge into non-physical. So now you close the gap. And when you close the gap, what you're asking for and what Source has already answered and where you are vibrationally is all in the same place. And now you can receive the inspiration. Now you can begin to realize the details of what you've been asking for. So recently, we've been talking a lot about your point of attraction, because most people have no idea that they are emanating a signal and that everything that comes to them is coming in response to that signal. Point of attraction. And so we've been likening your point of attraction to that emotional scale that some of you have heard us talk about. There's the ornery disc. It's a spinning disc, you know. If everybody's ornery today, you might want to acknowledge you're on the ornery disc. Esther said it's like the seven dwarfs. There's the ornery disc and the happy disc and the grumpy disc. She's got about 200 dwarfs now, passive aggressive. So as you accept responsibility for what your point of attraction is, and you deliberately try first thing in the morning to maintain that pure frequency that holds no resistance in it longer, after a little while, it takes about 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 days of getting up every morning and reaching for it. You've been doing it for a long time. And once you find that, then what happens is momentum begins to flow into your experience. That's when you get insight. That's when manifestations like emotions and good ideas begin to flow into your experience. And so something that you said earlier made us want to talk to you about that. Esther said, please call it step 4, please call it step 4, please call it step 4. Because when you hang around on that high-flying disc consistently and make it all the way through breakfast without falling off, or maybe even till lunchtime, or maybe even through the day, and then you begin making the association between the lovely things that happen to you in this day and the relationship that they have to the vibration that you've chosen, now and only now, are you then able to co-create with non-physical. So then we're getting right to the heart of the question that you just asked, because it's such a good one. So okay, so now I'm on this high-flying disc and I feel really good. And I've been there for a while, and things are letting me know that I'm there, because I'm rendezvousing with nice people and traffic's nice to me, and I'm zigging and zagging and finding good parking places, and most of all I feel clarity, so I'm not confused, and things are working out in my life experience on all fronts. And I can tell that I have shifted, like you said. I've made a dramatic vibrational shift that is sustainable, because I did it on purpose and I practiced it on purpose, and now I own it. It's mine. So now, from that vibrational place of supreme alignment, still, problems can present themselves to you. There's still contrast. But the difference is, the problem doesn't rip you from the disc. It looks like an opportunity. It looks like something that's interesting. It looks like something that you'd like to think about. It doesn't look like something that overwhelms you or overtakes you or defeats you or doesn't like you. It's just a simple choice, you see. It's a lovely thing to get it that you're vibrational. Offer your vibration on purpose. Watch how everything responds to the vibration that you're offering on purpose. And then watch contrast show itself to you in poignant moments, like at 3:13 in the morning.
Can we reach that state of love that has no opposite, joy that has no opposite, while we're still here in physical? God realization?
Yeah, but you wouldn't want it. And for this reason, if contrast were to cease, expansion would. And expansion is necessary for eternity. In other words, without choices, there couldn't be more. And without more, then there couldn't be all of us.
I just have this sense that if there's so much violence on our planet, and there was violence in my heart when I went to Biloxi to find my father.
We know, but you see, there's a big difference between the ornery disc and the disc of despair and the disc of revenge. There's a big difference between that and that high-flying disc. We're not even comparing apples and oranges. And of course, it would be far better. We would rather see you in rage and revenge than in despair. We would rather you feeling revenge and rage than guilt. But we would far rather that you feel overwhelmment than rage, and hope than overwhelmment, and love than hope. In other words, there's always an improvement in the vibration. And that really is what we are all about. Source is, through all of you, finding higher and higher frequencies. The stakes are becoming more satisfying to all of us, you see. The misconception is that Source has got it all figured out, and that that's finished and perfect, and that humans are still vying for that understanding. Where what's really going on is Source is expanding into greater capacities of love through that which you are living. And when large segments of your population are in abject hatred, you are launching rockets of desire that the Source within you joins. And the love in the non-physical becomes greater because of the hate that you lived. That's that expansion that we're talking about. But it doesn't do anybody any good if somebody doesn't line up with it. And Source never lowers, in other words, this high-flying disc that we're talking about. Esther plays with us because sometimes she'll say, Abraham, I'm not in such a good mood, and I think you should come down and play with me. Because I know that this negative emotion that I'm feeling is because you're there and I'm here. And if you'd come down where I am, then I wouldn't feel the separation. And we say, we're not coming. You got to come up. You got to come up.
But doesn't all of humanity have to come up?
Yeah.
I mean,
and it all does when you make your reemergence. And like you, we agree. We don't think you should have to croak to be happy. Right. We think you should be able to train yourself into vibrational alignment.
But can one of us or two of us or a handful of us who are living as close to this Source energy, from a place of divine love,
Of course, but
can't we impact like millions of people?
You can, because one who's connected to this energy is more powerful than millions who aren't. But the thing that is interesting, your mother couldn't get your attention. You see what we're getting at? In other words, there she is, pure positive energy,
right,
focused on you all day, every day.
Right.
And you had to be in the right frequency in order to hear her. And so that's the way it is with Source. Source is in that high frequency, but you got to be in the vicinity in order to feel it. And until you've felt it, you can't know it. You can't get it from our words. No one can get it from your words. No, nothing can replace that releasing of resistance that happened to you at that gravesite that day. There just aren't enough words in the world to explain what happened. But you experienced the releasing of resistance and the aligning with Source energy and with your Father in that moment, you see.
It's been my teaching mission almost to encourage people to, you call it contrast, but to rid ourselves. I mean, it was an act of forgiveness, if you will, that totally transformed my entire life and affected millions.
We know,
and
but what
millions
took you so long to get there? In other words, that's what's happening to everyone.
Yeah.
They would feel better if they would think thoughts that feel better.
Right.
But there's this thing you've been taught that Esther said to us, but Abraham, it's true. It's true. Therefore, shouldn't I think about it? This happened to me. This is a true thing. And we said to her many times, there are many things that are true that feel good when you focus upon them. And there are many things that are true that feel horrible when you focus upon them. We would be selective because when you focus upon the things that feel horrible, you're out there on the raw and ragged edge without your Source. Now, not really without your Source, because Source never stops perceiving life through you. But you've got yourself pinched off so that you don't recognize it, you see.
Can't someone who's living closer to Source energy, impact like in a family or in a community? Or
certainly.
Isn't that what Abraham is doing?
Certainly, certainly.
Is that what
but
you are doing? I'm sorry.
Certainly, but they have to be ready. They have to be in the vicinity. You can't set your radio dial on 98 and hear what's being broadcast on 101. The frequencies have to match up. And what happens with people is then they become self-degrading. In other words, they beat up on themselves when things aren't going well. And we just want them to understand it was a vibrational choice that they have some control over if they will try a little bit. That's why we're so excited about talking you into, first thing in the morning, just finding some general thought that feels good and try to stay there until some momentum gets going. And show yourself how this day is different because you did that. And after 30 days of doing that, you'll know what we're talking about.
What about the last 5 minutes before you go to sleep? Which is what I tell people in talks often, is that when you are in slumber, that your subconscious mind starts to get programmed, and if the last 5 minutes before you're just going off to sleep, you're thinking about all the things that went wrong and how this didn't happen and this is never going to work for me and I'm not financially and I'm sick and this doesn't work, aren't you programming your subconscious mind, and then you wake up and the universe just offers you this,
we agree with
experiences that match up to what you've placed in there.
Yeah.
So those last 5 minutes, it seems to me, it's like you want to put in there all of your I ams. I am content.
But here's the thing. If you've had a hard day, you can't just say it different in the last 5 minutes, because the universe doesn't hear what you say. The universe hears how you feel. So your best chance of really feeling good is after a night of momentum slowing, rather than after a day of momentum increasing.
That's very, very well said.
Yeah. Certainly, it's always better to speak positively, but don't you find yourself sometimes challenging your own thoughts? People will say, it's like my thoughts are thinking me. And we say, if you've got a negative train of thought going, what you want to do is make it more general if you can. Just generalize it, step back from it if you can.
I'm just thinking in terms of, you're going to sleep for 8 hours, let's say, and you're going to marinate in whatever thoughts that you have just filled your subconscious
Not really.
mind with. No?
That's the thing that we're really wanting to explain, is that law of attraction, the momentum of law of attraction, is not active while you are unconscious. Now, it's logical that when you wake up, you'll refocus and you'll get that your propensity of thought is already there. But that can change with this new discussion about getting a different trajectory going. Someone the other day gave us the best word, because he's been deliberately getting on that high-flying disc and staying there with some success. He's in his 60th or 70th day of that. And he said, now it's beginning to feel like I'm tethered there. Like sometimes I'll dip down, but it's like a bungee cord that takes me right back up. And we said, that's exactly what we're saying about this non-physical you. You're tethered. You are tethered to this pure positive energy. But you've practiced not being there enough that you've sort of stretched your bungee cord to its limits. And now you're dangling around in vibrations that don't serve you and that are not really who you are. But it doesn't take much to get that elasticity back so that...
Is this like a conditioning process? I mean, like from the time that we're little boys and
Yeah.
little girls, we're told what we can do, what we can't do, what's possible, what's not
Yeah,
possible.
by those who don't know. By those who are looking from lower discs, who are wanting to prepare you for the inevitable failure that they think you will live. And in the early days, you didn't like that at all. You protested in the beginning. You did. You protested. And the source within you knows who you are and is always reminding you. That's why at 3:13, some of those thoughts flow.
I'm just thinking about as babies, there was a poet, William Wordsworth, who said, our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. Heaven lies about us in our infancy.
It's a forgetting because it's a forgetting in the sense that you don't remember the details, but you remember your worthiness. You know your value. You know you came with purpose. That's why when people try to tell you otherwise, you don't take it well in the beginning. They can condition you to let go of that, but you can spring back. Start tomorrow morning.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about all the parents out there,
Yeah.
and how often the conditioned you can't do this or that's not possible. Or
If we were giving one encouragement to parents, we would say, choose your disc and then talk to your kids. Don't let the subject choose your disc. In other words, they've misbehaved or they've disobeyed or they've disappointed or. So as you observe that chooses the disc. And then you can have a lifetime of hating someone under those conditions. But if you choose the disc because you want to feel good and then are inspired from that broader perspective, you got to remember that they've got inner beings too. Your inner being knows everything that you've asked for. It's swirling in this vibrational reality. knows everything that you want and where you are right now in relationship with everything that you want, and knows the path of least resistance to get you to it, you see. So when you begin practicing what the path of least resistance feels like, then you can guide some others too.
Well, couldn't we get it from babies? I mean, couldn't we learn it from babies?
Well, hang around with them, they know it.
Yeah.
That's
I've
one of the
been
nice-
hanging around lately with a little boy, quite a bit actually, with a little boy named Jesse. He's 2 years old. And
Can feel his wisdom,
oh,
his
my
knowing,
goodness. He's
his love.
just the most, I'm just so in love with this little boy. I mean, and when I take him by myself and I just take him down to the swimming pool and I'm just with him, I look him in the eye, I just ask him about God. I ask him about source energy. I ask him about, come on, tell me more. And he really,
And what he says is, you make too much of all of this, and don't make me think about things that I don't want to think about yet. And I'm new here, and I really like it so far. And I want everybody to feel about it like I feel about it. And I would like to maintain this alignment with my source energy through all of the days of my life experience. And it's fun to hang out with somebody like you who has reconnected with all of that. And so you feel really good to me. You don't feel like most people. You feel like that which I know to be. That's why I gravitate to you. That's what he's saying to you.
Amazing, Abraham, because the first time I saw him, he was, I don't know, 5, 6 months old.
Yeah.
I recognized him.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, this is a cute little boy and all of that, but I saw something.
Well,
in fact, I saw myself in him as a little baby myself. Sometimes I even wonder, can you be?
Yes, but that's not what it is. You felt the resonance with his alignment.
Yeah.
In other words, he's tuned in, tapped in, turned on.
He is.
He hasn't disconnected from that. He's still tethered, you see. Yeah.
He just brings so much joy, even thinking about his little face. And
Well,
making
that's
him
what the
laugh.
infusion of new ones coming in is all the time. You think you're there to teach you. You think that you are here to teach them. They are coming to teach you. Because what they're teaching you, animals too, we're on the high-flying disc. Don't mess it up.
And we do mess it up.
You don't mean to, and you don't have to. And when you do, you don't feel good. When you deviate from the vibration of who you are, you feel separation's too strong a word, but you feel the pinching off.
Yeah.
And you feel when the pinching off releases. And if you want to play with it, just take some subject that you feel resistance about and just get more general about it and watch what happens.
What do you mean?
Well, for example, you could, let's say that it was before you had that wonderful realignment with who you are at the gravesite. And you're still railing about the inappropriateness of this ne'er-do-well father. And it's just eating you up. You just feel the discord in a really strong way. And you don't want to feel the discord, but you can't change what happened. You can't change the stories that you heard, and you can't change the way you have felt about it. In other words, it happened, and so it's a strong momentum within you. But nevertheless, you don't like the way it feels. So you could change the subject and think about things that feel better. But with something as significant as parent and child, it comes up all the time. You see parents with their kids, and you see kids with their parents, and so it's something that comes up. So it's important for you to find a way of soothing the energy. So you say, I can't believe how that guy just left us. I can't believe how he turned his back on us. Feel how the momentum is getting stronger. Never even look back. I don't even think he even acknowledged that I was alive. I don't think he cared about me at all. He certainly didn't care about the others. He didn't care about my mother. Momentum is speeding up. And the more momentum you add to that, the worse you feel. You can get really strong momentum going until you can really hold yourself for a long time out of sorts with who you really are. But now you don't want to do that. You have listened to us, maybe heard a little bit, and so you're saying to yourself, I just want to feel better about this. And I really don't know what the guy was thinking. I don't know what was going on in his world. I don't know. Nobody's really explained to me how he felt. He might have felt broken. He might not have felt like he had anything to offer any of us. He might have felt like we were better off without him. I don't know what he really felt. I do know that he provided an avenue for me into this time-space reality. I'm glad about that. And I do know that I had a lot of contrast early on, and I think that has served me. And I do know that the relief I will feel when I let go of this is going to be pretty significant. And I don't believe that Source is hating him. I don't believe that Source is holding him as object of attention and finding what's wrong. Oh, maybe that's why I feel so awful. I have a different opinion with Source about my father.
And when I step out of this form,
you'll reemerge into the opinion that Source has about everything.
And what about my father? Will he be there?
Right there. Oh, right there. Right there. And offering no explanation whatsoever. Don't look for closure. There is no closure. It just keeps opening. You never get to the bottom of anything. Law of attraction just gives you more detail.
Did I need to have all of that contrast, all of that rage, all of that in order to get to...
You didn't need it, but you didn't not want it. You said, I'll go forth, I'll figure it out. I'm a teacher, and I'm going to teach a lot of people. And the majority of people aren't born in feathered nests on high-flying discs. The majority of people are born somewhere on the emotional scale. And I'm a teacher, and I'm wanting to write books that assist them. And I can't write what I don't know.
Wow. You can't imagine what you just touched in me, because... Because I've just written a book that's not even published yet. It won't be out until March. And it's called I Can See Clearly Now.
Clarity is Esther's new favorite word.
Yeah.
Because when you're on that high-flying disc, clarity feels better than anything. To be clear-minded, which means to be sure-footed and know what to do. Yeah. The book is I Can See Clearly Now.
I Can See Clearly Now. It's a song, but it's also... But I can't tell you how
I'm remembering everything that I knew before I came forth into this physical body, and so much more that I picked up along my physical trail. All the contrast that I lived put things into my vortex that for a long time I didn't allow myself to see. But now I'm a vibrational match to everything that I put there, and it's a beautiful world that I have created. I've put enough in my vortex to keep myself busy for 20 or 30 lifetimes, and I'm eager about all of that. I see where the world is going. I see that others have the capacity to do this too. That no one needs to hold themselves in discomfort and disconnection. That there's no reason for it. The Source is right there for all of us, whispering to us, speaking clearly to us. All we have to do is just listen a little.
That's what I was going to ask you, because it's this book. What I've done is I've taken the 58, it just turns out there's 58 chapters, and each one of them is just a look at, I'm going along this way, and then suddenly I'm making a left turn or a right turn, or I'm doing a about face, and it's like, like the first 5 books that I wrote for the public, I never mentioned the word spirit, God, consciousness, higher higher awareness. Never was mentioned. I wrote books about psychology and all that.
They weren't ready.
Yeah. And then I wrote a book, and I looked in the index because I was writing this book, looking back at it. And in the next book, it's called, you'll see it when you believe it. And it was, there's like 39 references to that. And then the next book after that has it in the title. And then I'm giving lectures about it. And it's like, is there some force in there? I mean, I made a dramatic shift one time on the Long Island Expressway. I was teaching at the university in 1976, shortly after the visit to my father's grave. And I was driving down the LIE, which means lie, and I pulled off to the side. It was something overwhelming. And I was about to be granted tenure at this university. And now everybody was looking for tenure and wanted tenure. Tenure is like, you've got a job here for the rest of your life. You're guaranteed you're going to be staying right here in this office doing the same thing that you've been doing for the last 6 years. And it was like a frightening kind of feeling for me. And I had to, how do you turn down tenure? I mean, it was hard to get. I was going to be a full professor. I was going to have a guaranteed job for, and all of this. And I pulled off, and something just was overwhelming. I mean, I actually got flushed, and I got back in the car. I didn't call my family. I didn't do anything. I drove right to the university, went into the dean's office. Her name was Sarah Fassenmeyer. I said, Dr. Fassenmeyer, I said, this is my last semester. I've written a book. It was called Your Erroneous Zones. I just took it out. I said, I can't take this. And it was like, that was one of the chapters, and I can see clearly now that moment when I think, what was that? Was that source energy? Was that, what? I mean,
Yes.
it's just, and from that moment on, I mean, I gave up all the benefits that you get from being employed with, somebody else.
You gave up
and all.
bondage.
Yeah, I did. And in the first year that after I made that decision and allowed that to happen, I made more money in the first year than I had made the previous 36 years of my life. That was just one little aspect of it.
That's what we meant earlier when we said that everything that you desire is in your vibrational reality. And the source within you knows where it all is and the path of least resistance to lead you to it. And it's not getting to it that is the big deal. It's the path that is so fun along the way. So when you, really quick, so when you came into this physical body, there was that trajectory that we're talking about, that trajectory of well-being. So let's say it's a path of least resistance, but it's one of ease, it's one of fun, it's one of following your bliss, it's one of joy, and most of the world doesn't resonate very well with that because you just look lazy to them. So you take a little tributary where you choose some other things and you give it everything you've got. But the whole time you do it, you can feel that this natural path is calling you. And sometimes the stakes get pretty strong. In other words, you could really feel, but the ultimate trajectory of who you really are always wins, you see. We just don't know what it takes you all so long to relax and give in to your natural well-being, you see. And what we do know, it's that you're listening to the others who have all the lists of things that you need to do in order to please them, instead of listening to what the source within you knows.
You said something before when I said you hit a chord with me. It was like, when you read, I can see clearly now, it's not that you need to read, I know that you know everything. But I'm speaking to all the rest of you mortals out there. The affirmation or the words, I am a teacher, which you must have said to me 5 or 6 times before, is throughout this entire thing. I'm over and over saying these words, I am a teacher. I am not an employee. I am not somebody, I'm not to be told where to go or how I'm going to do it.
I am an extension of source energy who has practiced my vibrational frequency into such alignment with my true nature that anything less than that feels off to me. And because I care about the way I feel, I guide myself easily now toward the things that feel good. And therefore, I am always on my path.
And if the things
and this book will lead you to yours.
And the things that feel good, sometimes we confuse things like it's safer, it's easier, it's but it doesn't feel so good inside.
Well, safer feels better than fear, than danger, and so it's a step in the right direction. But you don't want to hang around reaching for safety, because you can get a vibration going and then everything that's about that just shows itself to you. In other words, this is a self course that you're all on, and you have source energy guiding you every step of the way. And when you find something that feels good, go that way.
I had a great teacher in my life. I was studying early to be a Jungian analyst, Carl Jung. And he said this, and I had to ask you this. He said, at the same moment that you're a protagonist in your own life and you're making choices, at the very same moment, you're also the spear carrier or the extra in a much larger drama. He said, all of you are doomed to make choices. And it sounds like such a contrast. It's such it's like that's not a possibility. If you're doomed, how could you be making choices? But within our physical bodies, we're doomed. I mean, Esther showed up in a female body of a certain height and certain color hair and certain things, and I showed up in a 6'1" male body, and and its hair's falling out and growing in its ears and all of the crazy things that are happening to it, and I'm just watching it. And so I know that but I also have choices to make about this body. I can feed it well, I can exercise it, I can, do so many things so I'm making choices within sort of a doomed state. But what about the other part of us, the spiritual side of us,
Well, we can see how someone who is trying to explain to someone who's not in this moment on the high-flying disc.
Right.
In other words, if someone's having a really hard time, we understand why someone would use words like doomed.
Right. Doomed, he didn't mean it in a,
Meaning unwanted choices,
right.
meaning that there are unwanted choices. But what we have noticed is that as you have the longer and longer opportunity to sift through the details of your life, and personal preferences are born within you, that you become clearer and clearer about who you are and what you want. And then that's usually when we begin meeting our physical friends, because they're usually at the point where they know that they want to believe that they are the creator of their own reality. They just don't know how to go about it. This is a new conversation that we are having recently, because we so much want our physical friends to understand that you come as non-physical energy to explore contrast more than you would. In other words, in your physical body, you explore the contrast more than we do from our non-physical vantage point. And out of that comes more detail, more improvement about this physical time-space reality. The evolution of all species is dependent upon that contrasted experience. But when humans explore contrast and then want to compare manifestations. These are good manifestations, these are bad manifestations. These are manifestations that we want you to pursue. These are manifestations that we don't want you to pursue. And we need to come to some form of agreement which defies the intention that you all held when you came into your physical form. Then you just become shortage consciousness. Then you just become sort of fighting over the spoils rather than tapping into the energy that creates worlds and really loving the life that you've come to live. So we get it, that from a place of not feeling good, that you could measure all kinds of not feeling good and separate it into all kinds of distinct categories. But we would like you to just for a little while accept that you are vibration, accept that you are source energy in physical bodies, accept that you are offering a vibration and that vibration is being responded to by law of attraction. Accept that you can feel the opinion of source and the opinion of your vibration, of your focused consciousness in every moment and every day. And that you can bring yourself back online with who you really are and what you came to live. Now that sounds a little bit like you're a puppet on a string and that source energy has already defined what you're supposed to live. And that isn't what we mean at all. Because all this sifting and sorting has caused you to expand, and your inner being has become the equivalent, the vibrational equivalent of all of that expansion. So there is nothing that you have lived that the larger part of you has not become. And when you care about the way you feel, now you can become it here and now. And when you do, the first thing you feel is clarity. Clarity about which way to go. Clarity about whether to do this or not. Clarity about whether to have this conversation. Clarity about whether to go that way or that way. Clarity about whether to invest with that, whether to marry that. Clarity, because broader perspective knows who you are, knows everything about you, and is offering a very strong, very clear opinion. But you got to practice tuning into it if you want that kind of guidance. And the alternative is really miserable, because your physical friends are all wanting different things from you. You say, go this way, go this way, go this way, go this way, go this way.
If you're off that path, if you know that you have a dharma, you have a destiny, there's something, I don't know, you're a great artist. For me, it was a teacher. For me, it was a writer. For me, it was these are things that
For
I've
you,
absolutely...
it is an uplifter. For you, it is a keeper of the light so that others may find it.
But when I got off that path,
Yeah.
when I would get away from it, some of the most profound changes in my life came when I was at those lowest places in my life.
Because when you don't know what you do want until you know what you don't want. And some of that contrast launches some really big rockets. And it puts you in touch with your emotional guidance system so that you can tell when you're on and when you're off.
Is this source energy, whatever, it's like if you're programmed, if you will, or whatever it is, that you have something that you're to accomplish here, in this time.
It's not like that.
I know accomplish isn't the right word, but it's like...
You have come for freedom, growth, and joy.
And when you're away from that, when you're on a path that's taking you away from freedom, from joy, from love...
That sucks.
Yeah. But does divine guidance come into your life at that time and say, okay...
No. Divine guidance is into your life all the time. All the time, all the time. Divine guidance never goes away. It's just that the contrast makes you listen more.
Yeah. I listened to
Esther has found alignment that she never knew was there for her because of the discomfort she felt in Jerry making his transition.
Right.
Didn't even know it was possible. Miserable at first, worth it now.
Yeah. I was being interviewed by the New York Times, and Arthur Miller was there. And Arthur Miller was a great American playwright. Most of you know the Death of a Salesman, The Crucible, and so on. He was 91 years old. And he was asked the question by the interviewer, are you working on another play? He was 91 years old. And he said, and I've never forgotten this because it really resonated with me. He said, I don't know, but I probably am. Meaning, I think that there's something else moving these checkers around in this checker game that we're playing.
Well, here's the thing, and then we'll take a segment of refreshment. You have been asking, and you've put your preferences into a vibrational reality that you are not cashing in yet. So, yes, he's going to write another play. It's already there. And when he stops talking about how tired he is and stops fussing over how incorrectly they handle his material and gets a good night's sleep, he'll wake up with an impression or an inspiration, and off he'll go again.
Exactly what I did with this last book. On June the 26th, I announced to my kids that I'm not writing any more books. I'm done writing. I've done enough. I don't have to prove myself. I've done 40 books and so on. June 27th, I woke up and I was writing. And 5 months, I wrote morning, noon, and night until I put my neck out of joint. I mean, I could not stop the writing.
You just have to accept that your vortex has enough content in it to keep you busy for 20 or 30 lifetimes. And as long as you're having fun, then isn't that the point?
Yeah, it was fun. It was just great joy.
Really good.
Great joy, as it is to be with
We're
you.
enjoying this immensely. Really good time for a segment of refreshment. We are eager to continue, if you are.
I am. I was thinking at the end of the first session that about this guidance and about being able to see more clearly now in my life, and that it took a lot of years and a lot of time, a lot of experiences for me to be able to step back and to see that the right people were showing up at the right time, and that the guidance was there. And that you have to have kind of a willingness to listen and a determination to not allow other people to dictate to you what your life's purpose is. And that has to come from, I was talking to Esther backstage about just this afternoon, I watched the movie called Jobs, the story of Steve Jobs. And while he behaved in a pretty crass way to many people, there was something inside of him that was an absolute knowing that this is the way this is the way this industry has to go, or this is the way this computer business or running his company or something.
And he felt a certain level of frustration because he knew he was in alignment and was not able to convince the others because they were not in a place to hear him.
And sometimes we find ourselves like in relationships. Like I was in a relationship with my wife for many, many years, and we separated 13 years ago. And it was one of the tough, trying times in my life, probably as close as I ever was to a depression. And yet it isn't always just the things that smell good and the things that look right and the things that make you feel right that make you make those right turns or those about faces and so on. Sometimes it's these enormous obstacles, and you have to almost be fearless.
We want to tease all of you a little bit by saying to you that if you were more unwilling to put up with negative emotion, your lives would go a whole lot better for you.
Well, say that again.
You have trained yourselves to be willing to endure misalignment, and then you make decisions without the clarity that you're talking about.
Right.
And then you sort of have to go down that path a little ways until what happens, and it's true in the conversation that we had with you about your father, and it certainly is true about how Esther felt when Jerry made his transition into non-physical. After a while, you just get really tired of feeling bad. And we don't think the stakes should be that high. We don't think you should have to let so much momentum go so that you're really feeling bad before you recognize that you could have it another way. You see.
So sometimes it's like to be in a state almost of gratitude for the hardships, for the things that are...
Well, that would take care of everything.
Yeah.
If you could stay in a state of appreciation, because appreciation is the way the source within you feels all the time about everything. So it'd be constant, continual, chronic alignment.
Because it was in those moments of despair that I was feeling that when I finally began to be grateful for it instead of feeling sorry for myself, that I became a much more compassionate person. And my writing took on a whole new flavor, and the books that I wrote and the message. In fact, it was when I wrote The Power of Intention, which was probably 50% of it was impacted by your teachings, by the teachings of Abraham. It's all over that book. I couldn't, because I was very deeply into not allowing myself to continue down this path of despair. And when people are in relationships or in places or in jobs or wherever it is that nothing but despair is showing up, that the risk that we feel about changing it, getting out of it, moving along.
But if you're able to make the correlation between how you're feeling and what thoughts are behind you feeling the way you are, and then realizing that you can change the way you feel because you can change your thoughts, and then events change, then you're off and running. It's just a matter of practicing on purpose, thinking and feeling on purpose.
It's almost as if different people start showing up in your life, different circumstances. Carl Jung called it synchronicity.
Depends on what disc you're on. If you're on the Henri disc, Henri ones show up. If you're on the high-flying disc, high-flying ones show up. If you're on the feel sorry for me disc, people show up. Law of attraction never gets it wrong.
So God will send you smarter people if you stop thinking in dumb ways.
So, you know what you don't want, you know what you do want. But knowing what you do want is brief because you just figured it out just now because you knew what you didn't want. And knowing what you don't want is a stronger vibration. So you don't start thinking about what you do want right away. It's sort of illogical to you. It's not your pattern of thought. So you think more about what you don't want, which causes you to launch another rocket of what you do want, and another, until there's quite a gap between where you are and what you're asking for, where you are and what the source within you really is. Well, after a while, if your desire is really, really, really strong, in a moment when you're not paying attention and arguing for your limitations, sometimes that desire can triumph. And you can catch a glimpse of who you really are. And that's the benefit. We like to talk about your inner being who is always there with the light on. So let's say you have a lot of friends and they're all over the place in terms of the way they feel. And you are too. So you're sort of zigging and zagging, and sometimes you hang out in a good feeling place together, but not usually. You're just sort of zigging and zagging. And then you figure this out. You start waking up deliberately and finding good feeling thoughts and practice them until other things like them are joining them. And now you're consistently there. Well, your friends have been up and down and all around, but now you're consistently there. Now they're going to rendezvous with you, and you're going to have a teaching moment, you see. That's what your inner being has been doing all along. It always stays there, and sometimes you have that moment where you get it, you see, because words don't teach. It's only life experience that teaches.
It seems like we get almost inundated with bad news. You know, like what we watch on the...
You're on the bad news disc, you do?
Yeah. Well, I find, in the last few years, especially the closer and closer I get to what I think of as divine love, just living from a place of oneness, that I'm not nearly as interested in hearing the news or in hearing other people's sad stories, or there's just a horrible thing just happened in the Philippines where 10,000 people they estimate, but it's come down and so on. But to continuously watch, the horrors of the world and the violence and so on.
Well, without realizing that watching it causes you to practice the vibration of it. And so now you've practiced the vibration of it, so you're going to rendezvous with more of it. And it doesn't mean that you're going to have that horrible experience, but it does mean that more experiences like that are going to come into your consciousness, and they're going to mute your sense of well-being. And then physical friends say, well, it seems like I should not just put my head in the sand. I shouldn't be oblivious to what's going on in the world. And we say we would be a selective sifter. We would do our best to see our world through the eyes of Source, because Source is looking at the expansion. Source is looking at what is wanted. When you define that you want something, Source looks there. And when you look in opposition to what you have defined for Source, you separate yourself from Source. The vibrational frequency of a question and an answer are very different frequencies. And the vibrational frequency of a problem and a solution are very different frequencies. So when you realize Source is on the solution frequency, and when you're not, you feel bad, because you're not going to feel the inspiration. You're going to maybe feel more contrast and maybe launch more rockets, and good can come from it. We just think that it doesn't have to be so hard for so many of you.
But do you have to constantly be aware of the kinds of thoughts that are there? I mean, they just come in.
No, but you have to care about how you feel. Because if you care about how you feel, when you start down the track that is not in keeping with the Source within you, you'll feel the emptiness, and that's exactly what it is. You'll feel that you have diverged from what Source thinks about this.
That's amazing, because years ago, when I first got a cell phone, I had to put a message on there, and I was very heavy into your work at that time. And so I put an answer on my machine, and it said, this is Wayne Dyer that you've reached, and I want to feel good. That's what it said. I want to feel good. And if your message is designed to do anything other than that, you've reached the wrong number. Perhaps you should, maybe you want to call Dr. Phil or someone, who wants to hear bad news. And I've still kept, that's still my message on my answering machine, because I want to feel good. Now, thoughts...
That's the message that Source has, too.
Right. So when we're having thoughts that don't make us feel good, we're in a relationship with someone that doesn't make us feel good, we're in a job that doesn't make us feel good, is Source energy going to offer us up experiences that are going to match up to what we are thinking, that is feeling bad, feeling horrible?
It isn't Source that's giving it to you. There's no lesson being applied.
Well, I was talking about certain people will show up in your life, experiences, synchronistic kinds of things.
Always. Things are always working out for you. Always.
So it's like your gauge is to look at your feeling. Well, how do I feel? What does this feel like in my body? And if it doesn't feel good, instantly go back to whatever thought it is that I'm having that is allowing this to take place. I mean, can we all just always feel good all the time?
The way we like to explain it is that when you offer a thought about anything, Source, who is always walking with you, thinking with you, living with you, is having a thought about the same thing that you're having a thought.
That's really important to hear that.
And when you feel good, your thought's in sync with the way Source thinks about it. And when you feel bad, you're off the track of what Source knows about this. And you also have to understand that you're the one who parlayed, you're the one who told Source who you are and what you want. In other words, you are the creator of your own reality. Source is the one who holds the vibrational frequency of what you're asking for. It's not possible for you to desire something that would be detrimental to anyone and feel good at the same time, because if you set forth an intention like that, you would deviate from the vibration of Source and you would feel the emptiness of it, you see. So it really is about caring about the way you feel, thinking more deliberately, and keeping an ear to the ground about how you feel.
And if you don't feel good?
Don't worry, it will get bigger.
What will get bigger?
The thought will get bigger, and the awareness that you have diverged from who you really are will get bigger.
And ultimately, you'll just walk away from that? You'll leave that situation? I'm thinking about, again, the movie I saw this afternoon about Steve Jobs, where it was just, he didn't feel good about just the way things were going in the working of his company and so on. And he just had an absolute knowing, which I've had my whole life, an absolute knowing about how to do what I do, and I listen nicely because I'm nicer than Steve Jobs was to people who tell me how I should be doing things. But inside there's this absolute knowing that I can't veer away from, and it's
true masters have figured out how to access this energy that creates worlds. They know what leverage feels like, and they get hooked on it. And so when you're accustomed to things moving in big ways, because you've accessed this energy, because you've figured out how to stop shooting yourself in the foot, and you've practiced it, and you've allowed the momentum to get going, then when you deviate from it, you take it pretty hard and you know it. He reached the place, and many of you do, where you just get tired of trying to convince people who are on different vibrational discs what you mean. In other words, he reached the place where he realized, and accurately, that if he were to try to convince them of the course that he believed was right, that he would risk his own alignment, and he wasn't willing to do it. And so he stepped away, created a whole other company, found vibrational alignment, and eventually things came back around to him. But the way we like to describe it is, most physical beings live in a world where they're trying to please each other. They have given their guidance system away long ago, because when your mother or someone holds you as her object of attention and approves of what you do, it feels good to you. So you keep trying to do things that will make her feel approval, which feels good to you, without realizing that every step along that way, that you are giving up your potential awareness of your own guidance that is coming forth from within. So a lot of people come to believe in action and words and group consensus, and they create to a certain degree, but compared to those who tap into this energy stream, it is a very mediocre creating. So there are a lot of people who learn to be nice because it's expected of them, and we're not saying that niceness, that you can't be nice at all situations. We're just saying it's a normal thing when you're focused upon the exact opposite of what you want. It's a normal thing to feel bad. And it is not a normal thing to convince yourself that you feel good when you don't. And that's what you witnessed in that documentary.
Right.
He wasn't willing to pretend that he was in that leverage that he was so accustomed to when he was not. And so he just stepped back and said, fine, you all do it the way you want to do it, because you are beating to a different drummer than I am. And eventually, they came back begging him to assist them.
After I declared that I wasn't writing another book and that I was done with that and I was tired and I didn't have to do that anymore, and then I wrote for 5 straight months every single day. I'm already writing another book, and that one isn't even published yet.
There's no end to your books. Just give in to it. Just give in to it.
And I mean, 2 things. One is I was thinking, like when I was 12, 13 years old, it's one of the chapters, and I can see clearly now, I was watching, everybody else was watching Milton Berle on Tuesday nights, Mr. Tuesday Night, Mr. Comedy, and so on. But I was watching a show by a Catholic bishop, Bishop Sheen. It was called Life is Worth Living. And I was 12 years old, 13 years old in 1953. And I was actually taking notes on this show because I just loved this show. I had a stepfather for a few years, and he was Catholic, and he would turn this thing on, so there was no Milton Berle where I lived. But I mean, I couldn't wait for Tuesday night, and I was thinking, 13 years old, and I'm writing notes on a show called Life is Worth Living.
Because?
Well, I've written 40 books that could have been the subtitle to.
But because, you're 13 years old and doing that because?
Because it seems to me now, as I step back, I didn't know it at the time.
Because you were doing it then because?
Because this was...
It felt good to you.
This is what I was here for.
It was clarity.
Right. So now...
So he was a man, tuned in, tapped in, turned on, offering a vibration. You listened to him long enough to feel some resonance with it.
Right.
It called you back, a very important piece in the unfolding of that which is you.
And when
he was tuning you to the frequency of your source.
Was this like extraterrestrial? Was this celestial guidance? I mean, was this...
It always is. It always is. None of you are here alone. All of you are powerful creators. All of you are meaningful and important. All of you have come with great reason and purpose. And if you don't feel fabulous, you've deviated somewhere along your trail. And it's time to wake up in the morning and reach for the high-flying disc and train yourself back on it and find out who you are.
So that everybody watching, everybody here, it's like when there's something inside of you that's calling, it's like I just think of it as a calling.
By the time you hear the calling, though, you have trained yourself to the frequency, and that calling feels like inspiration. In other words, that's when it starts being revealed to you. You start realizing it, you see. By the time you feel the calling, you've been in the frequency long enough that you're starting to translate it into something that's meaningful for you. Yeah, and that's a self-taught course.
Yeah. It's interesting because now this thing that I'm writing, I mean, I took the Tao Te Ching, this famous book written 2,500 years ago, and wrote my interpretations of it in a book when I turned 65, 8 years ago. And now, like, I have a place on Maui, and I had 4 things that I had to do. I had to stop at the Safeway to get some gift cards, because I was going to see my kids. I had to stop at the bank to get some cash, because I was going to see my kids. Right? You have to save lots of cash for that. I had to stop at the vitamin store because I wanted to pick up some supplements because I was going on this trip, and this is a part of that trip. And I wanted to stop at another store that sells something called poke, which is this wonderful Hawaiian food that I love. And then I was going to come back to where I was going home. But instead, my car actually drove me. I wasn't driving. I don't even know how to say this. I was just...
You were inspired to behavior that wasn't coming from your conscious mind.
Right.
Because you were in vibrational accord with broader perspective, who knows who you really are and where you really meant to go.
Okay, so it took me to Barnes & Noble. Okay? And I'm at Barnes & Noble, and I'm walking into Barnes & Noble, and I'm halfway out of the car, and all of a sudden, what am I doing here at Barnes & Noble? I got to get back home. I got a flight to catch. And I'm over to, and I'm going to take this, another classic text that's called the Bhagavad Gita that was written, again, 2,500 or so
Now
years ago.
fast forward for a little bit and imagine being in the clarity that you're in now, walking through Barnes & Noble and knowing that there's something really important there for you, feeling that sort of clarity about it.
Right.
In other words, you stumbled into it and you knew it when you saw it, but wouldn't you like that clarity every step of the way?
I would.
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
I have it.
Yes.
But not every step.
Yeah.
But a lot of them. A lot more of them than I used to.
Right.
So there I am looking through various things on the Bhagavad Gita because it's just been a calling. I just think that this ancient text has been misinterpreted in so many ways. And there's...
Like all ancient texts.
Yeah, okay.
Give it up.
And then...
You have access to source energy now.
Okay.
Right now. All of you.
But I want to ask you something from there. Okay. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it's a simple story of Arjuna, this man who's getting ready to go to battle, and his...
Low-flying disc.
Right. And his charioteer turns out to be Krishna, turns out to be source energy, God. All right,
No,
whatever.
not on a low-flying disc.
Well, in the Gita. All right? Yeah. So he's being given this advice about I am, and so much of it is in alignment with what you say, but there's a point in there that has so troubled me because I've read the entire Bhagavad Gita 3 times now in the last couple of months, and I don't even know why. I just keep reading it and going through it and taking notes on it and writing, and it's like I feel, I even know the date that I'm going to start the writing and so on. It's all...
Maybe it's because the original authors would like to help you clear it up and write it the way it was meant to be heard. Maybe, I don't know. It's just, but there is a point where he's ready to go to battle and he has said that this is his duty. And Krishna, source energy, supposedly God, says to him, go and do your duty. If it means killing people, then that's your duty because you don't get to kill anybody. I take all life. I'm responsible for all life. And he goes off into battle, to do his duty. My question to you, Abraham, is... do we have duties, that involve doing things that are inconsistent with divine love? Do we? Never. But when you're on the low-flying disc, what you hear sounds like a message. In other words, now here's how it works. So let's say that you get on the disc of revenge or worry or insecurity, and you stay there for a while, and you read online about it, and you talk with other people about it. So you get a lot of momentum going. And the key word here is you get a lot of momentum going. So there is a frequency, the frequency of despair, the frequency of orneriness, the frequency of hope, the frequency of love. There's a frequency. These are the different discs. But once you spend a little bit of time on a disc, law of attraction provides momentum. So when you get on that disc of revenge and you talk with others about it and you fan the flames of your dysfunction and your how you've been wronged, and others join you and the momentum gets very, very strong, eventually enough momentum happens that you feel what feels like an inspiration to act. It's momentum. It's the force of something that is moving in the direction that it has been moving. But we promise you, you never get that kind of momentum from source energy.
So
Source never joins you on the revenge disc, ever. But we can see how it feels like it because the revenge sure felt better than being taken advantage of, and it sure felt better to overtake them than to be overtaken by them. But there is another way, you see. And if you're on that disc, then you're not even playing that game.
And so there's a lot of people who are living their lives doing things that are just my job. But in fact, their jobs involve a lot of violence, a lot of hatred, a lot of killing, a lot of things that are inconsistent with higher awareness, higher consciousness, and justifying it on the basis of what Krishna is saying to Arjuna, which is this is your duty. You don't get to take life. I take all life, and all life is given by me, speaking as God or source.
We are not taking issue with anything that anyone decides that they want to do. We're not saying that that behavior is wrong while another behavior is right. But we are saying, unless you are in sync with the source within you, the behavior that you're offering isn't inspired, it's motivated. It's not coming from source, it's coming from the spin-off of man's conscious mind. In other words, source would never guide you to negative behavior toward any other. And if you feel that you're being guided toward negative behavior toward others, you've just got momentum going on a lower flying disc. And
well, one soldier a day commits suicide.
Because he is off the trajectory of who he really knows himself to be. He can't bear that behavior.
So
here's what we would do. So here you stand, you're listening in on this, all of you, and we're having a very in-depth, truly leading-edge conversation about it. And so you think about soldiers who are doing their duty, and you want to feel patriotic, and you want to appreciate them for their sacrifices, and you appreciate the things that they're doing on behalf of your nation. Well, those feelings feel good to you when those are good feeling thoughts. So that's the aspect of that you want to focus upon. So let's say that you are aware that negative behavior, truly awful things, are happening to people in villages somewhere. And when you focus upon it, it takes you to your knees because it is such a departure from who you really are. So what do? Do you hide your head in the sand? Do you condemn those who are doing it? Or do you let this contrasting experience help you define what you want, and you then line up with that? So do you then begin telling the story of a world that is more compassionate, of a world that is understanding more clearly who they are, of a world where all children are eating, where children are waking up and feeling secure in their own beds, where parents are waking up and understanding that the world is big enough for all of them? In other words, you can beat the drum of dysfunction, and it is an easy thing to do in this world with all of this media. But it never feels good to you when you do it. And you have choices that if you will make them, you will discover your true power. Because one who's connected to the stream is more powerful than millions who are not, you see.
Oh, it's so true.
So if you hold yourself in a vision of what you want relative to whatever is happening with this war or with this experience, and you are able to find yourself in sync with source, you'll feel inspiration. And the thing that is most important is that without even going, without even sending your dollars, you are trading in a vibrational currency. And when you sync up with source and you hold those things as your object of attention, people who are there, who are also tired of that, who know that this isn't the answer, may have an opportunity of picking up on that path of least resistance that you have carved out, and an idea is born within them, you see.
I see a lot of that. I mean, I get a lot of mail and so on from people who are in that.
You can change the world, but the world doesn't need to be changed. And that seems like a paradox. But if you believe the world needs to be changed, and so you're efforting, now you're preventing your alignment with the source that allows you the goods in order to change it. And so you have to work yourself into alignment and then get on the high-flying disc and then. Yeah.
I think about, it's like so much of our, I often give it, in my talks, give this example of if I gave you a currency of $1 million, and I said, go out and spend this on everything that you want. We can go to the mall and just buy anything that you want, and you can start walking through stores, and every store you go into, you buy something that you don't like. Send me 10 of these, send me 50 of these, and then you get home and you ask, why is my house filled with so much stuff that I don't want? And the answer I always say is because you're crazy.
Because you tried to fill the void with action. You tried to fill the void. You're looking for love in all the wrong places. You tried to fill the void with action and things rather than alignment. And that doesn't mean that in alignment you won't be inspired to want some things. But if the inspiration comes from alignment, they will be meaningful things.
But isn't so much of our inner attention not only on what we don't want, and we spend this currency, which is our thoughts, to create what we want, but it's on what other people want for us, or it's on how things used to be, or it's even on what is. I mean, if you don't like what is, and your thoughts are on what is, it seems to me that you're going to just create more and more of what is.
It comes from people's belief that they should face reality. And most people offer most of their vibration in response to what they're observing. So they observe it, they offer a vibration, they get more of it. And so, of course, they come to believe it because they focused on it and it came to them, and so they believe it. But when you realize that you have the option of focusing on things that you really want and that those things will come to you too, then you're a deliberate creator rather than a creator by default. It's a wonderful thing when you realize how quickly law of attraction is responding to your vibration. But it is an even more wonderful thing when you realize that law of attraction is responding to your vibration and that you can feel the alignment, resonance, or misalignment, discord of law of attraction responding to the source within you. Now that's something that we have not talked about before. As you have been expanding and evolving, the source within you is beating the drum of who you are. And there's this powerful trajectory of wonderful things flowing to you. And when you get off the track from that, you really feel it, you see. And when you relax and let yourself get back on the track, then you feel your clarity, then you feel your abundance, then you feel your worthiness, then you feel your fun and vitality and eagerness and passion. Then life is good for you, just the way you intended.
Are there ascended masters out there? I mean, we hear so much about people like Saint Germain and Jesus and people who are Babaji.
This alignment is not like a college degree, where once you achieve it, it is yours forevermore. It either is or it isn't in the moment. But there certainly are those who catch the spirit of that alignment and work to maintain it. And that's what you're talking about.
And can we access, can we access these people, or?
They're available to you at all times. Just get focused on what they're interested in and see how readily available they are to you.
And what are they interested in?
Everything that you're interested in. From their vantage point. They're eager. You know that this is the leading edge of thought. This is where it's at. Humans think that this is just a trial ground and that heaven is where it's at. But this is the leading edge of thought. This is where thought manifests.
Earth's crammed with heaven.
Earth is heaven or hell, your choice.
And speaking of hell, does such a thing exist? Is this just...
Only in the mind of a disconnected human. The animals don't know it. Only humans who pinch themselves off from clarity. Wouldn't you call confusion a sort of hell? Wouldn't you call lethargy a sort of hell?
People who've behaved in horrific ways, is there punishment when they leave this earthly plane?
That really disappoints humans when we tell them that is not the case. The greatest punishment is self-inflicted as you deprive yourself of the energy of source, which is available to you at all times. And when you disallow that, it's very unpleasant. But when you reemerge back into non-physical, you will leave behind all doubt and fear, all grudges, all hatred, all misunderstanding. And you will become a vibrational equivalent to all that this life and before has caused you to become.
So all of the low points in our own lives, when I think of, as I was writing this, I can see clearly now. I look at some of the things that I did, the ways that I behaved, my consciousness,
But how would you know you're seeing clearly if you didn't see not clearly? How would you appreciate the clarity that you've now found if you hadn't lived in some of that? And how could you live other than what you're living? With the source right there calling you forward, calling you forward, calling you forward. And then it's easy to get all the way forward and look back and say, shouldn't have been on that path and shouldn't have been on that path, when source called you every step along the way, because it was the path of least resistance, and therefore the only path that was available to you at the time. It's a good thing to give yourselves a break. Source is not judging you. You do it to yourself, and then you pinch yourself off from source.
But I think of I don't know, but I've just been lucky that had I been found out some of the things that the ways that I had behaved at earlier times in my life.
But things are always working out for you. And your behavior didn't deserve punishment. It didn't deserve finding out. You're just off your path a little bit.
Right.
You know, source is always looking the other way when you stumble. Never looking at what you think is wrong. That's you that do that to yourselves and each other. Little child is just learning to walk, falls down. Get up, you little dummy. You don't say that. You acknowledge that this is the way he finds his balance. And source feels the same way about all of you.
So I can feel good about some of those. I've often
You
said
better if you want to be on your high-flying disc.
Right.
In other words, you can't look back with any condemnation of self without disconnecting yourself from source, who feels good about everything you've lived.
Everything.
Everything.
I've often said that true nobility it's not about being better than anyone else. It's about being better than you used to be. And in every regard, I think I am better.
Nobility is overrated because it's what people. It's the consciousness that people have. God never uses the term nobility.
Unless
Ever.
it applies to all of us.
Well, what does noble mean anyway?
Well, it's like we're talking now perfection. It's like
Yeah, but there isn't any of that because you never get it done. Perfection smacks of endedness, and there isn't any of that. So nobility, those are some of those things that humans use to compare themselves with each other while they're on lower flying discs.
This thing inside of us that we call a soul, can you share a soul with another person?
Well, it's consciousness, and it is a stream. And Esther has felt, as she's reached for Abraham, that we are a collective consciousness, and she can feel some emphasis sometimes that is stronger, a lot of emphasis in this conversation, because she can feel what you're calling forward.
Right.
Sometimes, here's the best way of explaining it. When Jerry made his transition, now Esther had been hearing from Abraham for a long time. She was very comfortable with the idea of Abraham, with the vibrational relationship with Abraham. She'd come to know how we felt. She trusts us. She knows the feeling of us. She really can feel the fullness of us. And when Jerry made his transition, she didn't want him to just go be part of the Abraham soup. Of course, he is part of the Abraham soup, but she wants to carve him out in a special way. She's always had Abraham. Now she wants Jerry in the way that she's had him. She wants him to be interested in the track titles for this conversation that we're having. She wants him to be interested in this piece of furniture that she's buying, because he always said, let's not junk it up. And she worries a little bit that she might be junking it up a little bit as she buys one more thing and drags it home. And so she's interested in what he thinks about all of that. And she can feel that because of who she knew him to be and who she now knows him to be, she can feel the specifics of that which is Jerry from non-physical flowing through her.
And how do you know it?
And the strongest thing, we'll answer that in just a moment. I want to stick this in first. The most interesting thing to Esther was that she had to forget who Jerry was in order to find who he now is. Because some things that he didn't like very much, he's not pushing against anymore. Some things that he felt strongly about, he doesn't feel strongly about. So she's had to let him train her into his new perspective in order to really find him. And in doing so, she's finding her own inner being in a stronger way. It surprised Esther because she was just living happily ever after. And she was just following what she considered to be wise man who was always loving and always kind and always good to everyone. And she just sort of let him take the lead, and she followed in pure bliss. And now she's discovering that he wants her to lead. And then he will revel with her in the alignment that she has found.
Is this done through a feeling?
Yeah. When Jerry was in his physical body, as you are, and they were having a conversation, she would say, I really want to know what you think about this. And he would say, I think it's not that so much as you want me to agree with what you think. And that was sort of kind of true. Where now, she's not interested in him agreeing with her. She really wants to know what he thinks. She wants to train her vibration into that pure, positive energy.
Does he give you signals when he's around? Does the furniture move? Do things fall off the suitcase or the
first awareness she
bookcases?
had, and this will tell you a lot, because it speaks to the power of desire, sort of what we were talking about with your father, where your desire was so powerful, and even though you had a big wad of resistance going on, your desire was so powerful that it was dominant. So you had that wonderful forgiving, coming back into alignment moment. And so what Esther's noticed, early after he had made his transition, she was visiting with her sister, and she was really having a hard day. And she was saying out loud to Jeannie, where is he? He said that he would show up. Where is he? I want to know where he is. I can't find him. Where is he? And at that moment, the Sarah book on the shelf right where he had placed it slapped itself right down on the counter. And there was no question that he had made his presence known, because the power of Esther's desire was so strong. Well, that was 2 years ago. Now he won't play that silly game with her. In other words, by now, she knows that she must be in alignment with who she is. So there's a light in the bedroom that can be seen. The house is sort of U-shaped. So there's a light in the bedroom that Esther can see from the bedroom, from the living room looking across the porch, across the pool, from the office looking across. She can nearly see that light on that quartz wall from just about every room that she's in the house. And so when she is really feeling good, that light blinks in appreciation of her joy. But if she ever goes in there all feeling sorry for herself and says, blink the light, you think he's going to blink the light? He will not come down to a lower disc to play with her. She's going to play with him. She's got to get up there where she belongs.
When I make my transition, will I be able to make contact with the people I love?
Yes, everyone that you care about.
You set an intention before? Because I've been doing that.
Well, it's not only the intention that you've set before, but you're intricately tied with, just look at your teachings, the books that you've written. And so people who are reading those books, it's a vibrational frequency that you'll tap into. And sometimes that makes humans feel overwhelmed. For a little while, it made Esther feel jealous, because she mostly had Jerry's undivided attention when he was in his physical body, and now he'll visit with just anybody. But you come to realize that we are multidimensional, we are multifaceted, we are consciousness, and when you focus, we are always there, no exceptions. It's you tuning yourself to the recognition of it that this wonderful conversation is all about. We like the word realize, because the frequency is always there. But for you to realize it, you've got to be up to speed with it. And when you are, then that clarity that you were talking about, that realization happens to you. Yeah.
I've often said when you trust in yourself, you're trusting in the wisdom that created you.
How do you do that? You got to feel your way to it, don't you? Because if you learned it from your mother, she wasn't all that trustworthy.
Right.
She sometimes was in a really bad mood when she told you what to do. And so you train yourself into trust. That's why we like to say, it's our favorite thing to say, that when you hang around on this high-flying disc and you do it on purpose, and you recognize when you're slipping and then you add momentum to stay, or you recognize that you're off and so you slow the momentum because you don't want to be, so you get control of your own vibration, the first thing that happens is your own sense of worth comes into place, because the entire universe is assisting you. You just feel clarity and everything works out. It's like a concierge leading you everywhere that you want to go. There are no missteps, and if they are, you find them funny. Esther knew that she had really accomplished being on the high-flying disc in a more consistent way than she'd ever done before, when one day the housekeeper had dusted something in her bedroom and the extension cord had fallen behind a very heavy chest, and she couldn't get it out easily. And she is really laughing as she is trying to engineer how to get it out. And about 60 days earlier, she would have been swearing about it. In other words, I know she knew that she dropped it behind. She should have fished it out herself, would have been the conversation. And now Esther's just delighted in the ingenuity, in the clarity that she found to fish it out. And what are you going to do anyway? What kind of, you have more important things to do than fish extension cords out from under your desk? In other words, isn't life really about these moments and these moments and these moments? People are waiting for their dream vacation or their dream relationship or their dream car or their dream job. And we say, it's never going to come. It's now, 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 now. Now alignment or not, now alignment or not, now alignment or not, now alignment or not. And when you show yourself that you can have now alignment, now alignment, now alignment, now you're living the way you intended, you see.
Do you have to almost catch yourself when you're having a thought that's a misaligned thought and correct it? I mean, I don't, it seems to me it's stuck in here in our subconscious mind in some way.
It sort of is.
So you get a hold of this thought and you realize I just had a judgmental thought, so I'm not going to do that again.
Well,
but for me, I have to go back and correct the thought. And then I have to correct the behavior.
But just slow yourself down unnecessarily. We've written a lot of books with a lot of processes, and we're just here to tell you it's sort of kind of the hard way of going about it. Because when you slumber, your momentum stops. And when you find the high-flying disc and increase that momentum, now things are really working fast for you. And we're not saying that there is not behavior that you might want to change. Of course there is. But anytime you find yourself efforting, you're beating the wrong end of the stick. And you're practicing the vibration of resistance, and you don't mean to, rather than the vibration of allowance.
I often, for myself, have thought, I don't know, I'm changing my mind as we're talking here, that making amends, for example, making amends is a way of reprogramming your subconscious mind.
Well, when you find alignment with Source, Source never forgives anyone because Source never condemned anybody to begin with.
Doesn't blame in the first place, yeah.
So when you feel the way Source feels about someone, you're in sync with Source. And you call it forgiveness, we call it alignment. And you get hooked on that feeling because it sure feels better to love them than to hate them.
Oh, yeah.
Esther says to us on more than one occasion, well, Abraham, maybe I need to tell you more about that person. Seems to me you're being a little unrealistic in your unconditional love for them. But unconditional love is loving because that's what you do. Conditional love is change that behavior and then I'll love you. And that is such a trap for you and for them because now everybody's trying to figure out what behavior is the appropriate behavior. Nobody feels very good. You're mad at each other because nobody's really getting it done. And meanwhile, Source is loving all of you and feeling very good about it.
I wanted to ask you about an experience that many of you know. About 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with leukemia. And I had a series of events and so on. And there's a gentleman on the planet living in Brazil, in Abidjan. His name goes by the name John of God in English. And now, who am I to ask you whether entities can enter into somebody else's body?
By the results of what you experienced.
Yeah, but I had this most amazing experience with John of God.
Because like Jesus, his vibration of well-being was dominant. And because your expectation didn't prevent it, in that alignment, you experienced that.
So, I haven't been back to check blood levels or anything like that because I just go by how I feel and I feel fine. So, but so many things changed in that. But the major change after having this healing experience with this man who was treated some 40 million people over the last 40 years or so, was that a week after the experience, two of my children were with me on Maui, and when I walked out of the room, and I looked at them, they just looked totally different to me than they ever had before. They just looked like pure.
You were looking at them through the eyes
love.
of Source.
Yeah. And I mean, I was weeping. I mean, I put my arms around my daughter and told her how beautiful she is. I was holding my son. I looked at the ocean. It looked like a sea of love. You know, I looked at the palm trees
to
there.
alignment. Influenced to alignment.
Yeah, it was so powerful. I mean, and what I think, I mean, my 71st birthday was a couple weeks later, and I woke up that morning, I thought, my birthday? I was in San Francisco, and I was making a film about my father, about forgiveness and so on, called My Greatest Teacher. And all I wanted to do that day, and I never had a birthday like this, and I've never forgotten it. I went downstairs, and I had a couple of $1,000s with me, and I went down and I got $50 bills. A couple of $1,000s with them. And I went out to Union Square, and all I did all day long, from 7 o'clock in the morning until about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, was just embrace homeless people, little old ladies who were looking for plastic water bottles to take back, and people didn't smell very good, and people who were, I mean, it was like, and I was just in this state of bliss. It was such a pure love. All I wanted to do was give. I just wanted to give. I just wanted to serve. And that impacted me so much that, I mean, it's why I wear love on my shirt. It's why I'm writing about divine love. It's why I'm here speaking to you who teaches us about something called divine love, and what a thrill it is for me to just be here in your presence. But it was all, and what it seemed to me was happened is like when you're told that you have something like leukemia, there is fear associated with it. Not fear of dying so much, but just this cancer. It's that word, cancer of the blood, and and there's so much of it in our society, so much of it. And I have a dear friend, her name is Anita Moorjani, who's written a book about her near-death experience called Dying to Be Me. And she talked about her cancer and how serious it was and how she was able to come back from it. And she said, it's just all fear. It's just all fear. It felt like the entities that came to me through John of God came in and took the fear, whatever that fear was related to that, and just removed it and replaced it with love.
We would say it a little differently than the removal part, no. The emphasis on the love part, yes. Mm-hmm. So that the vibration of well-being was dominant. It's an interesting subject because everyone who is here in a physical body understands that they are going to make a transition. And yet it's seen by most humans as an inappropriate thing to do. So right away, if some path of least resistance looks like it's taken you out, then you have some determination to make about how you feel about being here. In other words, we were talking earlier about the contrast. You know what you don't want, you know what you do want. And soon there can be a pretty wide gap there. But when you close that gap, it's a really wonderful rush. So we want to put healing in the category of everything else that we've been talking about and call it alignment. But we also want to say that there's an awful lot of true alignment that happens in what you call the unwanted death experience, you see. And so what it comes down to is you and your physical body just making a statement of what you intend, because there is a trajectory, but you get to decide. As long as you're having fun and having meaningful experiences and are enjoying the way life is juxtapositioning you with other things, then there is no reason that you cannot continue to sift through the contrast and give birth to new intentions, and Source will support you in all of that, no matter what, you see. It really is your choice. And most, when they think of some of these illnesses, feel that they are without choice. That's why you feel fear, is because fear is the opposite of the way Source feels about you in that situation, you see. Fear is just the way you feel when you have a different opinion than the way Source feels. So what did John of God do for you? Because you, like everyone else, you have access to that energy stream. You did not need an intermediary to flow stronger energy at you. But what he did, he caused you to focus in a way where you had stronger expectations. In other words, he soothed the vibration of misalignment and allowed the vibration of alignment.
He allowed, say that? That was so beautiful.
You, by your attention upon him, found a way of allowing the energy that was there for you all along to be received by you. He's not receiving the energy and asserting it to you. You don't need someone to assert healing energy. You're all tapped in. But he helped you in the expectation phase. He, by virtue of what you know for him to do, what you've heard about him doing, caused your expectation to shift so that the fear was not there. And in the absence of the fear caused by your focusing upon him, then the healing took place.
But the healing was such a feeling of love, such a feeling of, it's
alignment, clarity. Use the word clarity. That's the best word to describe alignment. Clarity, knowing, unquestioning. Yeah?
Yeah, it's one of the, and I can see clearly now.
Yeah.
It's one of the signature moments in my life.
Well, because it felt like the stakes were higher. But the stakes are never high. In other words, you can be or do or have anything that you want. Source always has your back. It's just that sometimes when the stakes feel higher, you align more deliberately.
But it created in me a sense of just wanting to serve, to get my ego out of this.
Well, you can't not serve. When you're tuned in, tapped in, turned on, you act like a satellite dish, so that, in other words, it's what we were talking about earlier. People are zigging and zagging and zigging and zagging, and if you're tuned in and not, and tuned in and not, and tuned in and not, they don't have as much opportunity to rendezvous with you. But when you're consistently there, then more of them can rendezvous with you, you see. And the most interesting thing about that is you cannot serve others unless you have served yourself. Because if you're not tuned into that energy, you don't have anything to give anyone.
It seems, Abraham, that there's so much cancer and there's so much fear. There's so much disease in our culture, particularly in America, and there's so much fear. And I don't mean fear in the sense of being afraid of.
Let's just
dying.
call it momentum for a while.
Okay.
Just think of it as momentum, and then just watch what's going on around you, and notice the momentum, the perpetuation of momentum. But also acknowledge that in that knowing what you don't want, there's also a perpetuation of the solution. So even though the society is, for the most part, more in sync on the lower discs with the problem than they are the solution is in the process of becoming. And more like you will find alignment with it.
So if we can get this fear out of our this misalignment out, that you think the cancer rates will go down?
For sure. But you found a really good way of saying that right away. You said if we can get the fear out of it, and then you stopped yourself
right.
and said the fear is the result of the misalignment. And so if we can direct our thoughts more upon what we want and not so much upon what we don't want. But that's going to require a lot of people being willing to reach for better feeling frequencies. And you know what we notice about so many of you? Until the stakes are really high, most of you are willing to put up with the ornery disc. You see, so much that you're living that is such a departure from what you really want isn't because you're a terrible person. It isn't because you've done terrible things. It's because you're chronically holding yourself away from the vibration of alignment that is natural to you. And so just a little bit of attention to the way you feel and a determination to feel better more of the time, it'll take care of that.
Okay, so there's big, big, big issue out there for me.
So do you want to activate it and add momentum to it and practice the vibration of it?
So it seems...
Do you?
Leave me alone.
Do you?
Be nice, Steve Jobs. So it seems to me that the cycle of life is one in which, whether it's in the animal kingdom, or whether it's in the vegetable kingdom, whether it's in the human kingdom, or even the mineral kingdom, that the way it works is that this generation's seed provides life to the next generation's seed, to the next generation and the next. And it's like the seed from this plant gives life to the next plant, gives life, and so on. And it's the same.
We love you so much. Yeah.
Okay. And in humans as well. But what has happened, this has been just alarmingly drastic shifts in the last generation or two. The number of children born into autism, for example, has gone from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 100 in 30 years.
They are coming forth to demand their freedom to be. So they're saying, I'm going to be so different, you are not going to pound this round peg into a square hole.
Okay. The number, beautiful. The amount of obesity has increased in our culture, like just dramatically. I don't think for me it's because we become a nation of gluttons. What has happened, and I want to ask this question of Abraham, of you, is that we've gotten into this where we're starting to genetically modify foods.
Well, you're looking for love in all the wrong places. You're looking for food that tastes good rather than that feels good. You're not letting it guide you from your perspective of alignment. You're just looking for a way to fill the void. Don't you notice that when you are at your orneriest or your most dysfunctional, that you're looking for something to eat?
But what has happened is that we've genetically modified these foods so that the next generation of the seed for the next generation doesn't come from the wheat or it doesn't come from the corn. It comes from Monsanto. It comes from these big companies that have patents on our food, and we can't even put it in the ground without getting permission from big companies.
We don't disagree with you, but what if those like you who are now aware of that are launching some rockets of desire?
I am, big
and
time.
what if, instead of having the conversation of what's wrong with the food, you're having conversations about what you want the results to be?
I'm doing
What
that.
if you become a light for the vibration of well-being? What if you, with Source at your back, with the leverage that creates worlds, what if you shine a spotlight on that? What if that is the dominant vibration? In the same way that when you were at that gravesite that day and Source was flowing through you, and even though you had gone there to do something else to that grave that you ended up not doing,
right?
But because the vibration of Source was dominant, why not be the human form that focuses on the solution rather than the problem? And that is the only thing that has gone a little haywire with humans. You spend too much time in step one talking about what you don't want instead of articulating what you do want. So your frequencies are more about what you don't want.
Don't we have to be aware of what we don't want? I mean, I don't want to have my family eating genetically modified foods.
Of course, but listen just in this conversation to the amount of time you've spent on that subject as compared to what you could be doing about it.
I'm doing something about it.
When you think about how they're not trucking in any food from other planets, that the seeds are all here. Wouldn't it be nice if, in the modification of food, engineered food, there was a discovery of something that would be beneficial? And are you willing to accept that some of that has taken place? Some of that has taken place. But you personally prevent yourself from experiencing the benefit of any of that because you're pushing so hard. And really what it comes down to, and everyone is doing it to a certain extent, it's that, we were talking about it earlier, the difference between living in a world where you're on lower flying discs, and you just sort of duking it out with each other, deciding which pile is the worst pile and which pile is a little bit better pile, and no one really being in tune with source. You're just all talking about which pile is worse than which pile, as compared to someone who sets all of that aside, who has the benefit of the desire that's born from that, who now turns to your vortex, gets distracted from all of the issues that prevent you from resonance with well-being, and finds something like a little baby to resonate with. And for the time that you're looking at that baby, you are in sync with all of the good things that you put into the vortex. The misunderstanding that humans have is that they have to find the problem and then they have to wrestle it to the ground and kill it. And we want you to understand that there is no bottom to that. In other words, you're adding a vibrational momentum, and you can't win in that way. Meanwhile, those who aren't paying any attention to that will find a better way. It's always the way. Masses just gnarl around with each other and fuss and fight and fume, while a Steve Jobs or a Bill Gates finds a solution that revolutionizes the technology world. Everybody had the ability to do it. They just had to focus upon what they wanted instead of get bogged down in the muck and mire of what is. You said it. You have to believe it before you see it.
It's a good book title.
It's the best book title ever. Best book title ever. It says everything. You have to find a way of believing what you want. Because if you don't believe what you want cannot come.
Well, what I have done is connected with the people at public television, where I've done many specials, and agreed to begin to inform the entire planet, beginning with America and Canada, about...
We think that's wonderful. We just ask one thing. Get on your high-flying disc and then tell them what you know.
Well, the high-flying disc is that...
Get the vibration of source going with you. Talk about what can be, not about what can't be. Talk about where you're going, not about where you are. Talk about what's possible, not about the mess you're in. Get on the high-flying disc and let source speak the words through you. You do it all the time, just not when you talk about that.
Because that pisses me off so much. This, and I know that being in that state of being upset is, I've never really quite thought of it that way, but...
Well, movie makers have discovered that more people go to the ornery movies, the dysfunctional movies, than the high-flying disc movies. So if their goal is numbers and ratings, then they make a movie that appeals to where most people are. That's not who you are. You got to make a movie that appeals to God. We pulled out all the stops for that one.
It just for a second, can't you acknowledge that it's, that companies owning seeds?
The law of attraction is broken?
Pardon?
You want us to acknowledge that law of attraction is broken when it isn't? We'll acknowledge that there's a momentum going, and we'll acknowledge that the rage of the world and the more people that are focused upon it is adding to that momentum. And we will also acknowledge that if enough know what they don't want, that more will know what they do want, and there will be a tipping point. We just don't think you should suffer so long before the tipping point.
Well, I think what you just said will help the tipping point, where we can indeed begin to focus on how we want our food supply to be, how healthy we want our children to be.
Oh, when was the last time that you devoured some ripe piece of fruit right off the tree? Did you have to tell yourself? Did you have to read the label? Oh, this tastes so good. I wonder how they did that. Doesn't everything about you let you know the perfection of it?
I live on Maui, and all of the fruits there are, they don't even have seeds in them anymore. The papayas have all been genetically modified. So you open it up, and you used to think, I'll take these seeds and I'll put it in the ground, and I'll grow some papayas. You're not allowed to do that anymore. You have to go to Monsanto to do that. And you eat this piece of...
Oh, we have so much more to say to you.
I don't want to open a watermelon that doesn't have any seeds in it because it's been genetically modified. I don't want to
Have all of them been genetically modified?
eat. 99% on Maui have, yeah. I mean,
Then pick the one that hasn't
yeah.
and revel in it and say, this feels best to me. This is what I support. This is what I promote. Because when you push against what you don't want, you practice that vibration. And then law of attraction brings Monsanto's to give you what you're asking for.
It's not fair when this is something that really.
Well, if we were talking about things you don't care about, you wouldn't have launched these rockets of desire. If you were talking about something that you don't care about, you wouldn't have just enlisted the non-physical energy that creates worlds to support you. In other words, this conversation has left this in a place that it never has been before. The universe has expanded as a result of this conversation. You cannot find a solution if you don't poke around a little bit at the problem. Just don't get carried away in the poking around at the problem, because you cannot find a solution while you poke at the problem. The blaming, no matter how right you are, does not lead you to the solution, you see. And have you ever had an argument with someone? You know you're right, you tell them what you think, and don't they just come on stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger? It's like you pour gasoline on their fire.
It's kind of like what's happening in the political arena today, with two sides just so determined that their side of this thing is correct, that there's not even any possibility of compromise.
Well, they've stopped thinking. And they cannot be feeling. But it's not all lost, because the electorate is feeling a desire for a functioning government.
Right.
And you're in charge. But if you watch what they're doing and you let them lead you, then you don't find your power and it doesn't happen. In other words, one day we were talking with a woman on the telephone years ago when Esther was still doing consultations. And she wasn't having any of this. She was annoyed with us. And so we realized that we were not making any headway with her, and we said, let's play a game. We would like you to find 3 subjects, and let's just focus on them together. She said, why? And we said, because we want to distract you from the resistant thoughts that you've got going on. Why? Because in the absence of resistance, many things you want will begin flowing to you. Well, like what? We said, like blue glass. Have you ever contemplated how many beautiful different textures and colors of blue glass there are? No, I haven't really, and I'm not really interested in that. Have you ever thought about butterflies, the variety of them, the longevity of them, the persistence of them, the beauty of them? I don't really care about butterflies either. Have you ever thought about feathers? Feathers are everywhere. They are all around, all different kinds of feathers, benefiting all kinds of creatures. She hung up, annoyed with us. And Jerry and Esther were in California. They were in La Jolla. And so they went down to George's to have lunch. Jerry had not heard the conversation. Esther was not really remembering it. They went down, they were walking down the main street in La Jolla, past the La Valencia Hotel. And Esther had such an urge to go inside this shop that she dragged Jerry in, kicking and screaming. He did not want to go, but Esther was strong about it. And he followed her in, and on the back wall was the most amazing display of blue glass that either of them had ever seen. Now, they didn't want blue glass, they didn't care about blue glass, but nevertheless, there was blue glass. So they left, they didn't buy anything, they went to George's and had lunch, and then they walked down to the cove, which in their opinion is the most beautiful place where the land meets the sea. They love that place. So they're walking across this grassy area on their way to the rocks, and a flurry of butterflies so intense they had to stop talking in order not to eat them. Surrounded them.
Really?
And Esther still did not make any association. And then a little Asian boy who looked like he was about 3 or 4 years old came running from across the grass, looking at Esther, holding something in his hand. And when he got to her, he handed her a feather. And in that moment, it all came back to Esther. And she realized that in less than 2 hours, the universe had orchestrated a very clear, very clever path of least resistance to satisfy all 3 subjects that had been offered in no resistance. So it is our encouragement that you choose some things that you don't have a big wad of resistance, not a cause, not a mission, not a life's purpose, not something that you're all wadded up about. Just pick something easy and just ponder it lightly in the morning when you wake up. And watch how clever the universe is at helping you rendezvous with it. And if you do this enough, you will come to know that there is no influence that you cannot provide, that there is nothing outside your range. Because when you tune to your true desire, meaning Source is with you in that desire, in the absence of resistance, all things are possible. And all manner of things take place. People are standing around. They can't believe, what are these politicians doing? They're actually talking to each other. We've not seen them talking to each other. They're actually beginning to seem reasonable. They're actually beginning to work together. Wouldn't it be nice if a body of brilliant people, like those brilliant people, with degrees and purpose, wouldn't it be a lovely thing if they could come together and listen with reason and tune into the source within them and not care whose idea it is, but just revel in the perfection of the idea? This is a world that is possible for you. And it only takes a handful of you to focus in that way, you see. But as long as you're beating the drum of what's wrong with the politicians, you add momentum to that. And you defeat your own purpose. And you distract yourself from the true trajectory that is you. And you feel bad in the process. And you blame them for how you feel. You're powerful creators, you see. You're not facers of reality. You're creators of reality.
So even in the things that just seem most outrageous and most evil and most,
the more outrageous they are, the stronger the desire, and the more Source is on it.
Yeah. So you just stay with seeing it from as a, just launching.
Can't get there
as you
instantly.
say.
We understand. You can't get there instantly, but you got to care enough about how you feel that you start practicing yourself into the vicinity, until your sense of worthiness really descends consistently upon you, and you're willing to then take on the big subjects, the big solutions.
And anger doesn't motivate you to that, and frustration and...
Motivation is a whole different thing than inspiration.
I know.
Motivation is just unpleasant. Inspiration always feels good. It's a first step. We don't deny that. Just don't stay so long in that first step. Makes you tired and grouchy and cynical, and then you become a politician. We have enjoyed this interaction more than words can ever explain.
As have I.
It is delicious. It is delicious to take thought beyond. There's great luck here for you.
Thank you.
And for you. We are complete.